Welcome. This is Serenity Now. It's our third office hour. We're learning more and more each time we put these on. This one was inspired because of the conversations we've been having with leaders around our world and hearing the level of anxiety and everything going up. We put this one together because we feel that there's a need, and lucky for all of us, we have two special people that have a lot of information to share in this area, and in my mind they form two halves of a really interesting set of answers. The first person I'd like to welcome is Kelsey Fiss. Kelsey is a registered provisional psychologist. I have that right? Great. And so Kelsey's going to join us here to provide a psychological perspective on the issue of finding serenity through the holidays in the workplace. So welcome, Kelsey.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you this morning. See you.
Yeah, there you go. And Joan Yi is a long-time dear friend of mine. She is a skilled change and communications specialist. And I'm so happy to have her here because she's always been a big support to me personally and on the teams that I've run or influenced. Welcome, Joan. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks for having me, and welcome everybody. I was really excited to be a part of this, as I think it's a really big, juicy topic and very relevant for the coming season. So thanks.
That's great. If you have questions, make sure that you at least jot them down and put them in the chat so we can take a look at them. And in a moment here, I'm going to take the little slideshow down so that we can concentrate on faces, and that's going to be the basis of this conversation. The first half, we're going to go through some of the common questions you may have. We're going to level set, and we're going to get a perspective from Joan and Kelsey, and then we're going to open it up to your questions, and we're going to roundtable those. And through all of it, I hope that you have some answers that can give you next steps to go forward with and influence the people that are most important in your lives, and if you're a professional in the work world. I'd like to let you know that we've got a couple of things going on a little bit later directly related to this. We're going to be putting out a quick reference guide based on what we hear your questions are, where we land today, and some of the key resources and whatnot that we think are most important to this group. So what I'd like you to do, please, is when you have a chance, go to twe.team/serenity. And please just sign up there so that if you'd like to get that quick reference guide, and we're going to send it to you. Okay. So it'll take us a day or so to put it together, but then you're going to have that as a reference to go forward with. The other thing I would say is that keep an eye out for us in January. We're going to be holding our fourth session here, and it's going to all be around setting habits and being successful with those. So keep an eye out for that. With that being said, let's jump right into where we want to be today. So when we think about the current state of the world right now, we don't need to rehash the fact that things are tumultuous. But what I'd like to do is let's take a very clear view on where we think people are at. So my first question is to you, Kelsey. Kelsey, where do you think people are right now as it relates to the work-life blend or the work-life balance? And where would you like to see them? So
Yeah, it's interesting. We've definitely seen an uptake in clients coming either back or seeking counseling for the first time, because I think the general mood is we're all tired. We're a little bit anxious about how much longer this is going to go, and especially going into the holiday season where we don't typically have our set autopilot to these are our family traditions, these are family routines that we are doing. And so, yeah, just a lot of people are overwhelmed with, well, what am I going to do now? And I'm seeing that a lot, and a lot of just questioning, why is this so difficult? And having to have the discussion around, we've never been through this before. No one in our lifetime has gone through a pandemic, so there's no playbook. So of course, it's all going to feel new and overwhelming. And I think that's definitely represented in what conversations I'm having at a personal, private business level.
Are you feeling that people have a direct challenge with work? Is work providing a special level of stress, or?
I think it's just different. I think because they don't have their normal routines, their drive into work, working from home, having not that split between their home and their safe place and their work office where things get done. And just, yeah, it's feeling day after day like the same thing. So definitely work feels odd, whereas before it felt, okay, I had a rhythm, I had a routine, and now I'm having to rewrite everything. And so, sorry, to get back to your first question about where would I like to see people going, I think we all would like to see people just having a collective breath, feeling like it's okay to not be okay right now, and just trying to focus on what's the next thing I got to get done, what's the next thing that needs to happen, and taking care of themselves and having a lot of grace for themselves. So,
Great. Joan, can you pick it up for us there and tell me a little bit about what you're seeing, and in particular, where you would like to see people focus, and what would be your hope for them?
Right. So in the professional workplace, I think what we're experiencing, it's to Kelsey's point, we're in a pandemic. This is unprecedented. There's no playbook. And it's a huge change for everyone. And it's uncomfortable. We know with change, it is uncomfortable. Anything new, anything different, anything that's not routine, there is going to be some time that needs to be taken to understand what is this change and how do I make adjustments to change. And if you think about it in the change curve, we start with denial or disbelief, and then you go into lack of clarity. Things are confused, and I think for teams as well, what they knew before is now changed, right? You're now working from home, whereas before you were able to meet with folks in your building or your hub. Now you're having to find new ways to communicate with each other and work with each other and to keep moving things across. I think also people are tired too, because change is tiring. It's uncomfortable, and then it's tiring. And so know that you can get to the other side of it. It's a bit of a process. And what I would encourage people to focus on is to know how much that they've progressed since the change has occurred. So we talked a little bit about this a couple of days ago, where it really feels like sometimes we're plowing through snow and we cannot see in front of us because the snow mound is, for me, it's 6 feet tall because I'm short. Maybe for some people it's a lot taller. So we have no idea where true north is. But if you keep moving forward, you're moving forward. And then you take a look behind you, and then you see how far you've come, and to realize how far you've come.
I mean, that's an important point, because we have all done a lot of growing, and sometimes because we're so busy, just trying to tackle the next issue, we forget just how much we've actually developed and the new skills we picked up. And I mean, there's a lot out in popular media about just what we're learning and how much. And so, and that's fine, but to remember that internally, it's really important for us to focus on that. I'd like to talk about where we're going to aim here. And so I think a great way to start that, and then I'm going to ask Kelsey a question, is for us as a group to quickly surround a question and see where all your heads are at. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to launch this poll. What the question is, and we've given you several options there. What would you like to do more of personally to find serenity or calm or peace at home and at work this holiday season? So let's really focus in on what you feel you could do more of or would like to do more of. So if you go ahead and throw your answers in, that would be great. Great. Okay, we're going to close that down. Let's see what we have. Can everybody see that? Fantastic. So it seems like exercise and walking in nature have the I would say the winning spots there. Exercise seems to be always something that people are wanting to adopt, and one of the hardest ones to do. So let's turn this over then. There's many things there. The one thing that didn't get chosen was learn a new skill or a fun talent and read more fiction. But looking at those results, Kelsey, could you tell us a little bit about what constitutes healthy work-life balance from a psychological perspective, and give us a bit of context on how you feel where we should be aimed, what we should be satisfied with in 2020, and what maybe we can do with these results in mind.
Can you unmute me? You can't hear me.
I think you're muted.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry. Yeah. So, sorry, repeat the question. I was panicking.
So we had people, there was a wide variety of things that people were aimed at. Regardless of what we're going to try to do here, how can a person know that they're achieving that work-life balance, or perhaps what constitutes a healthy work-life balance in the context of COVID and holiday season 2020? Where are you trying to aim your clients?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, work-life balance is a tricky subject because it has to be a choice, I think, by us as individuals, and especially more than ever right now, to find that. And so I always encourage my clients, especially if you're working from home and you don't have that separate space, try to zone as much as possible your home and your workspace so that you have a place to go to. And it's like a trigger for your brain to be like, yes, I'm in work mode when I'm here, and then be able to either, if it's metaphorically or physically, close a door when your work day is done, and then you have that separation as much as possible. Routines are huge right now because that's what we can control. We can't control lockdowns. We can't control a lot of things, whether or not we're allowed to go into the office or not, but we can control our routines. So setting up healthy habits, waking up and going to bed around the same time is really important. Sleep is so important, especially as Joan was saying, going through the change model. When our bodies are stressed, they need that sleep time more than ever. Having those moments of just relaxation, whether it's mindfulness and meditation, where you're present in the moment, and just making those commitments to yourself, and try to make as much predictability as you can. Our brains thrive on predictability. That's why we go for routines so much. That's why, we seek that out. We like to know what's coming. And in the midst of all of this, we feel like we can't, but we can know personally, if we have a routine, what's coming. And that's just going to ease some anxiety so that you can bring on those logical thinking aspects of our brain. Dan Siegel has a great analogy, and he uses it with kids, but I think it works really well now, is flipping your lid. So if this is our brain, when we get anxious, everything flips open. And if our tops of our fingers are our prefrontal cortex, that's where all of our logic and stuff is located. And it kind of goes offline because all the energy is going to that animal part of our brain that's trying to keep us alive. And so the work-life balance, I think, comes into place when we can start to close that, when we feel like we're getting anxious, being aware of that. And just leaning into predictability and taking some time for deep breaths.
That's great. It's interesting when you talk about being in that survival fight mode. This might be a layman's kind of term, but when we think about that lizard brain or that animal brain and being there, we're really on the basis of where's the tiger in the grass, and where, is this person in front of me a friend or a foe? And do I have people or items in my life that are objects of anxiety or security, right? Is it going to help me get fed, or is it going to eat me? I'm curious, and this is where I'd like to bring Joan as we move this towards what we can do as leaders and influencers in our own organization. When we think about having safe space, and if I could ask, does that extend to also safe times? So safe
Yeah.
space physically and safe times temporally in the day.
Yeah.
Routines.
Safe places that you can go and just let your guard down and let the mask fall, where you can have that time to just be. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
when we think of those safe zones, when we think of routines, when we think of protecting sleep, mindfulness, reflection, and conversation, and then that habits and those commitment to habits and predictability. There's a lot there, and Joan, I'll have you speak to a bit of it. As leaders, what can we do to reinforce these, and perhaps what traps would you see that people could do to rob these from others? Because I think that's as leaders, we have to be mindful of, are we infringing on somebody else's space because we're not, say, organized or something. So could you riff on Kelsey's points there a little bit for me? Do you have some thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree. Like when my observation is with workspaces, it has been chaotic, trying to find some new routines and put some of those routines back into place that you had previously. So having the weekly touch bases are really important, and the weekly team meetings are important where you can get together and you can work together to resolve challenges and have that safe space where you can talk to each other and say, look, I'm having a challenge with whatever it is that I'm working with. I need a bit of help. What can we do together to move it forward, right? I think the other thing that's really important from a leader's perspective is to display confidence in your team and reaffirm that confidence in your team. I think that communication aspect and reinforcement through communication of this team has gotten so far. We've done really well. Look how far we've come. I know we're going to get through this. I'm confident in this team and the skills that this team has. We've been thrown a lot at us, and look how well we've managed. We've also learned a lot along the way, and it's, we don't know what's going to be thrown at us in the coming 2021, if it's anything like 2020, but I have confidence that we're going to be able to tackle it. So those are just some of the thoughts I have about, how we can move forward with this.
2021 might suck, but I'm glad I'm here with you.
Yeah.
And everything. Yeah. So, I mean, these are really good when we think about what we could do to settle our staff, or, I mean, we have employees that are going to be working throughout the break, but for those of us and people, say, in a more corporate environment or a more protected or salaried environment, we're able to step away from the office, and our people are able to step away from the office. And so I think, to your point, Joan, that message of, I'm sure, grateful for you, and going back to being that point of reference to say, we've done a lot and we're going to do a lot more, and give that future sense of hope and eagerness as part of a parting thought is pretty important. So when we think about giving people a sense of hope and avoiding delusion, I guess, in a sense, or not feeling like we're just giving them a sort of party line. Perhaps I'm just going to pose this to both of you. What do we need to do to make our messaging as leaders, or our well wishes as leaders, seem as authentic as possible? Kelsey, let's start with you in terms of what do you think would be the keys to letting somebody know that you're coming from a very real and authentic place?
Well, and I think there's something to be said with, as a leader, within your boundaries of sharing some vulnerability, sharing some of your struggles. There's power in going first and creating that safe space to talk about it. I know one client of mine, she is a manager, and I love this strategy. When they have team meetings, she allows time in their group chat just to talk about, hey, like, what are you struggling with? What's the extra load you're carrying this week? And just allow a space to dump that before they get into the planning. And I think that's a great place to start, because it makes people feel safe. It makes them feel heard. And it creates a space of trust, right? And again, you have to watch with boundaries, absolutely. But, just sharing, like, this week's been really tough. Hey, guys. And just like acknowledging the elephant in the room, that it's been tough. This year has been crazy. And then, yeah, like Joan said, like offering, hey, this is where we've gone. Like, give them that overview as the leader of, hey, guys, do you remember this? Right? Like, kind of get them out of their own, that snow track of negativity or hardness, and just reminding them of the good, I think, is a great strategy that leaders can use.
And Joan, in terms of either the strategies and things that you see people are using, or how they're going to do it, what would be your suggestions in terms of what are the most effective ways to contact people? So both, what would you like to see them saying, and how could they say it so that it makes sense and it matters and it's effective?
So a couple of things. I'll start with the communication aspect first of all. Often I hear, and I see it in all different communications, but in communication, having a clear call to action. And often I hear lots of call to actions, but I don't hear how you are going to support that call to action. So for example, to Kelsey's idea of, let's have some a safe place where we can have that conversation, where we have ground rules. You can bring challenges forward, and I'm going to support this by making sure we have a booked time every week, or this is going to be a part of our standing meeting. The first 15 minutes of every meeting, we're going to do this. So the two pieces come hand in glove. And it's with any communication that I see, if you have a call to action, what are you doing to support it? And then the last thing is reinforcing the idea, I'm going to support this. And when you're in the meeting, reinforce those concepts, because the assumption is once put out there, or once you've put it out there, I've communicated the idea. And we have heard, I think oftentimes, 7 ways, 7 times. So different methods of communicating. So whether that's on one-on-ones, whether that's in a meeting, whether that's you pick up the phone and you talk to that person. I'm finding a lot too, I don't know if people have noticed, and I'm just as guilty of turning off the video and just listening in audio when we do have video calls. And there is something to be said when you can actually see the person and see that they're, although this is virtual, you're interacting with them versus just knowing that they're online and probably doing something else.
It does put a face to the voice for sure, and creates a level
it
of.
Definitely does. But I think it's that piece of connection, and how are you connecting with your people beyond just a meeting item.
Yep, totally. So I'm just going to sum up a quick what I've learned really quickly, and then I want to open it up to the group. So here's some of the biggest takeaways that I've got so far. Yay! I just saw some people turn their cameras on. Here's a challenge for all of you. So please, if you're willing to, please, there's no judgment. You won't be featured on any kind of. We don't expose people's pictures when we post this on YouTube or whatever. We keep people. The anonymity is high, but I'm going to challenge you to throw on your camera if you can. So great. Here's where you had me thinking, both of you. I love the idea of a dump space. I think that that's really important to sort of depressurize the meeting, if that can be some protected time I would imagine it has to be protected though, and we have to say, okay, we're going to do this for 5 minutes, and then we're going to get on to business. So let her rip, folks. The other thing that I thought was really interesting was we have these good intentions or meanings, intentions as leaders, but then structuring those both, say, in a dump space or in some other way is really important. I know that I'll have a few fans when I say intent is fine, but we can't get to practice unless we have process in the middle, right? So we have to take a look at engineering our processes to create an intention as a reality, right? So whether or not that's a simple change to just how we conduct our meetings or what the agenda looks like, it's really important for us to take a look at what are our current processes, and if that doesn't change, we'll be fighting constantly to bring new intention in, because we have to realize them, we have to embody them in the business, and otherwise you're perfectly designed to get exactly what you're getting right now. So if you want to get something else, we better redesign. So I thank you very much, both of you, for those comments. We kept that intentionally very, very high level so that we have as much time as possible to take your questions. What I would like you to do, if you have something, is I'll be taking a look down the chat here. If you could just flag it with question in all caps, that would be great, so I can keep an eye on it. And we're going to open everything up here in just a minute. Again, don't feel too stressed about the book references or anything along those lines. We're going to be putting those into a quick reference guide for you. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and we're going to open the floor for everyone. And I'm just going to get confirmed that we have that. And in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and answer a couple of questions here. So actually, I think we're going to leave the mics off for just a moment longer while we answer some of these in text, and then we'll open it up for some free speak. All right. Here is a question. I won't say who it's from just yet, but how do you balance virtually managing a direct report without appearing to be micromanaging? And this is a great question because we're seeing a lot of this. So how do we manage how do we balance virtually managing someone because it's prone to getting too deep in the weeds, having to ask too many questions, perhaps taking too much authority over something, and having the air of micromanagement? So I have opinions on this, but I'm going to start with Joan.
Why did I know you were going to start with me?
I was looking right at you.
Yes. Fantastic question, I have to say. Managing virtually is an additional challenge that I don't think any of us had imagined would ever come. At least I never thought in my career. So the first thought I have around that is, one thing you can say, and just be honest, in this virtual world, it's a lot harder to communicate. You don't get that interaction one-on-one. I don't get the coffee station conversations or the hallway conversations that I normally would get. So I'm going to ask a few more questions. Tell me, I need you to tell me if it's repetition, or if where I'm at, or just help me to have an idea of where you are, or I think keep communicating, right? So
because if I'm thinking that if I've already given you the answer and you don't think you've gotten the answer, if you're my leader, then we better have a conversation about our communication style, because likely there's something getting lost in translation there.
Right. So I have two other thoughts, and I talk about this quite a bit when I'm working on communications, is listening. So listening means asking good questions and being curious. And the second piece is, the other thing I realize is, if leaders are not reaching out and trying to communicate or meet with their folks, what does the silence mean? What does the silence mean to your direct reports? And what does the silence mean for you? And this is where then you need to think about, am I having those regular touch points? And what are we covering in those regular touch points?
Yeah, because eliciting an answer from somebody, implicitly it says, I value your opinion. I need to hear from you on this before I come to a conclusion or something. So yeah, it really crosses over into value, and I'm going to put a plug in for, if any of you were with us on the roles and responsibilities conversation, we covered some of this. That could be a good reference for you. It's up on YouTube now. Plug. Kelsey, let's do you have anything to add, first of all, to Joan's point while I grab another question here?
Yeah, I really liked, Joan, your idea about listening. And there's different forms of listening. When we're working with couples, when we're working with families, that's a thing. There's listening to get information, and there's listening to understand. And I think asking follow-up questions, summarizing what someone has said, gives them that sense of community in the conversation. So I think that's really important. And yeah, just putting it all on the table. I think being honest, and just making sure that you value them as a person, not just what they're doing for you, but like, hey, how you doing? And throwing that in there is really important. I like that.
All right, let's go to another question really quickly here. And I will pose this to Kelsey. It's an interesting question, and I'm going to take a stab at how it is, how it's being interpreted here. But do you feel genuine? Maybe how do you feel genuine when asking how someone is?
Yeah.
It's funny. I'm just gonna, the image I have in my head before I let you take that, Kelsey, is me as a waiter and being encouraged to put my elbows on the table and be like, "Hey, how's it going?" Because it becomes pretty plastic pretty quick, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Kelsey, please.
Yeah. And to your point, I mean, it is trickier because we are online. We're not getting a lot of the information through our body language or tone, especially if it's over email. But I think to your point, like maybe moving it beyond that, like, how are you? But hey, what was your week like this week? What was a win that you really wanted to celebrate? And what was something you really struggled with? Be more directive in terms of that. And I think just responding with like summarizing, okay, I heard you, I understand. Oh yeah, that would really suck. Focusing on empathy, and an empathetic response. I think a lot of times we are so stressed about finding the right answer when someone is struggling, especially, or if they're trying to share, but just honestly being like, wow, I hear ya, that sucks. Or, wow, that's great, I'm so excited. And getting curious and coming from a posture of curiosity is automatically going to put you in a posture of being genuine. Because the how are you question, 9 times out of 10, we know when we get asked that, it's a quick, like you're passing in the hallway, or you're in a grocery store, and you're not showing a stance as the question asker as, I actually want to know how you are. And sometimes that takes that next step of asking the follow-up questions, being curious, and being more directive in what they've said, and being like, oh, well, what was that? And asking for specifics. That in and of itself is going to get genuine responses and come across as like, I generally want to know. I'm not just asking to check it off my list, if that makes sense.
Joan, can I ask you, when we think about Kelsey's suggestions there, are there mediums that lend themselves towards authenticity versus non, or are there general communication concerns and tactics we should be taking? And my curiosity here is perhaps being one-on-one with someone or communicating to a larger group. What would your thoughts be on that? How do we ensure authenticity? Genuine.
Yeah, genuine authenticity in a group. I think it goes back to what Kelsey had suggested, being authentic of where you are, sharing, going first with sharing.
So leading the charge.
Leading the charge, yeah. I think that's the first thing. Obviously, if, you have to also gauge where that person is or where the team is at. Is this the right place to be having certain conversations, right? Or is it
Mm-hmm.
something that maybe you let go in a larger venue and you circle with that person a one-on-one and say, hey, I just noticed, or there was a statement that you made. I just wanted to follow up, and I was curious about it. You're welcome to respond. You're welcome to not respond. Give them the option. But that would be my way to approach it, as my suggestion.
Sure. Okay. I think we're making good time, so I'm going to keep. I think I'll just try to gauge how much we've got. There's a very interesting question here, though. How do you recreate water cooler conversations and moments when we have nothing to do? Who would like to take us away here?
I have a suggestion,
Please.
if you don't mind. I actually am lifting this from my conversation I had with another colleague of mine, and I thought was brilliant of what they did in their company is they paired people for a month with somebody who's outside of their working group. So it was a little bit of peer coaching, peer mentoring. So this person is located in Calgary, and they actually have a North American company. So they got paired with a person down in, I think it was Colorado. And it was a person outside of their team, somebody they didn't know. And they were given a few guided questions to help with the conversation, but they set up, over the course of the month, a weekly meeting to meet up, have a conversation, have a chat. And this person said, as a result, they got to learn a little bit more about the other side of the company, but then you're also out of your realm as well, right? And so you're making connection, and you are having a bit of that water. Oh, I didn't know. Did you know about? And drawing some of those connections. So that's a suggestion I can share with you.
That's a great one, Joan. I would like to add on to that, but I'm going to wait. Kelsey, do you have anything that you'd throw into that?
Yeah, I think the intentionality needs to be there. It needs to be a plan. It needs to be part of the culture. So whether it's setting up a specific social thing, or, there's online games that have become really popular. So maybe having a fun night or something with coworkers that you all decide to sign up and do this, or have a Zoom chat where you're just connecting. I mean, you're gonna face some kickback from the introverts in the crowd, because it's gonna be like, this is awkward enough. But us extroverts are going to be like, yes, bring it on. But being intentional and just setting that, we're not having Christmas parties this year. That's a big loss in terms of that social, like, let off steam, celebrate together. So maybe having a virtual one where you all show up in your crazy Christmas sweaters, and have a chat and a drink and just keep it casual, and people can come and go as they please, or finding an activity that you can do together, whether it's a game or something online, I think would be great.
I'll give you two ideas from my end, if you don't mind. And I think those are great. One is, and this is stuff we've done in the past. We've done it both live and virtually, but it works quite well virtually because we were on international teams and we had to. Virtual talent show. Allow people to join in and share what they're painting, poems, playing music, spinning tunes if they're a DJ, all sorts of things. So you know who I'm talking to. I'm talking to somebody specifically right now in the room who I'd put a shout out for if you ever have any, if you like to disco. So there's lots of things that we can do in that sense. I'd say personally with our team, we keep a toolbox. And for years, my profession has been taking rambling meetings that are 2 hours long and getting them down into just the exceptions, 15-minute concentrated performance dialogues, right? Sure, I'm a creature of efficiency. Really? And I would say we've softened with our little team around saying, yeah, we're kind of through things, but we're just going to socialize for a half an hour, and we're going to be okay with that wasted time because it's not at this point. We don't have any other time. And one other idea for you is, and this goes on to Joan's piece around pairing people off. We've done this on larger formats where we actually take the entire C-suite and the senior leadership level in a large organization and have them sit as the chair on 1 year long engagements, little mastermind groups throughout an organization. The one rule is it can be nobody reporting to them, right? It would be ideally outside of their own department. And it does a couple of things for the executive and the senior leader. It gives them eyes and ears out into the world that they wouldn't have otherwise. It allows them to really spot high potential individuals and to actually give back into their community a little bit more. So mastermind groups internally are a really powerful tool if you've got a larger organization. Okay. So what can we do to make people comfortable on the one-on-one level versus encouraging them to actually show up on screen? Okay. I'd like to hear from both of you. Kelsey, could we start with you in terms of what might hold a person back from feeling comfortable? Because this is probably the conversation we haven't had. And then while we're doing that, I'd like each one of you in the chat to just put down in a couple of words, what are you most worried about when appearing on screen? See if you can nail it down to your top worry. Just go ahead and share in the chat there, and then I'll quickly summarize them. So, Kelsey, why do people typically want to avoid being face-to-face in an environment like this?
Well, I think with Zoom, because you can see yourself. Normally when you're having a conversation, you can't. And so you get very self-conscious about, oh, I'm touching my hair. Oh, I'm doing this. So I'm doing that. So I always remind clients that they can turn off their self view and just having that quick minute. Like if it's really going to bother you, you can still have your video on, but you can turn that off. And that just immediately makes it more like you're sitting having coffee or you're at a desk, or it just changes that. I know for myself, I had to do that because I was constantly worried about what my facial expression was going to be. But I think speaking to introverts and being married to one, I think the biggest thing that's draining for them is small talk. So I think maybe having that one-on-one time or having that thing be, okay, first turn off your self view so you don't see yourself, but I want to see you. Let's have a conversation, but let's not just keep it at that, like, how are you level? Let's like get curious and go deeper. And then be respectful of how much you do that, because they're going to not need it as much as maybe someone who's more extroverted and need that space to let it out and talk it through. So it just being understanding that it's not a slight, it's not a flaw. It's just they get energy differently. And so, I think just being respectful of that and understanding and trying to give them the option of when and how much they need to have the video chat.
Joan, do you have any follow-up thoughts on that?
Just a little one. I love this idea. I'm an introvert too, not that you would know, but I am.
Me too.
And so for me, I agree, but totally self-conscious of being on camera. I love the idea of being able to turn yourself off. The other thing is I find if I'm working with people on technical aspects, I'm okay with the video being off, because technically, I don't think you need to see me. This is my opinion. And we can work through things. It's when we need to connect and we want to have a conversation and I want to see that person's face and I want to feel like I am having a coffee with that person. Then that's when I want to see a smile and I want to have a bit of interaction. So perhaps it's like, let's get through the work we need to do, the first however much time, 15, 20 minutes that we have time together. You can leave the video off. You don't need to have that on. But maybe in the last 10 minutes, when we're talking about other things and trying to connect, let's put the video on.
Yeah. It's funny. People are when we were setting up for this, we met on Tuesday and we had kids coming in and all sorts of things. And I'm reading through what people's hangups are with this. they're understandable. I'm not getting ready for work in the same way. I've got dogs crashing in the room. I've got, in my case, sometimes teenagers arguing in the background or whatnot. Internet instability, technical close-ups. I'm using Zoom's like fix my appearance thing because if I'm in high def, man, you don't want to see that. It's just not. It's not pretty. And I really love this one here about not showing my thinking face. When I get thinking, I get angry looking. I'm like, yeah. And so it's tough to necessarily watch yourself. I was going to add though on the looking at somebody else's reflection, and maybe I'll try to find this and run it by Kelsey to make sure that it's legitimate. But I remember reading an article that was about there's an anxiety increase when you're looking at yourself constantly. It's actually an anxiety producing experience because in our heads, we're looking at ourselves, judging us, and nobody might be looking at us, but we think everybody's looking at us. Like we are even if we're not speaking, we're the center of attention, and that's nerve wracking. So there is real anxiety in behind this. I just want to go back up to the questions here for a minute. I won't ask you to read it out, but I did think it was a great one, and it was around the North American use of "How are you?" as a greeting. When people may not be doing well and we might not be prepared for the answer. I remember years ago being in school and having a Japanese friend, and I thought, Canadians were loved around the world. And she said, you Canadians are so, disingenuous or whatever. And I said, what do you mean? You're all fake. And she says, well, you act like you're our friends. And then I've had all these Canadians who they act like they're my friend. And then I say, okay, great, let's go out for dinner. And then they go, whoa, what are you talking about? Like, I don't even know you. And so we use this term, hey, how are you? And do we really want to know? So maybe I'll open this up to Kelsey and Joan. What could we say instead? And if you in the chat could have any ideas for our friends who are curious about this, go ahead and use your suggestion. What could we say instead if we're really not ready to ask the question of, hey, how are you? Maybe we're not in a place where we can take the answer.
And that's totally fair too, right? If you're not in that space where you're able to have that kind of conversation or the meeting doesn't allow for it, I think just saying, hey guys, good to see ya. And then just avoid it. And then that'll separate too. Like if you're going to have meetings where you're actually going to talk about and you're kind of doing more coaching and you're talking about it, then ask more questions like, what was a highlight for you this week? How's it, how are you finding working from home? Getting more directive again. But I mean, there's being polite. I usually start my sessions with how's the last 2 weeks been? And it's a general, like, just, oh, okay. But again, I'm in that focus of they're coming with intention to talk about their problems with me. So I may not be the best person, but I do know that how are you question, because it's such a rogue answer, can be triggering for people. So just starting with like, what was something fun you did this week, or general maybe?
Mm-hmm. Joe?
I agree that the how are you is a pretty broad statement. So I tend to say, how is your day? Or how's your day going? To keep it to a bit of a narrow frame. And it also is a bit of an invitation if something has occurred, then they can be a little bit more specific to what they've been talking to. Yeah, so that, yeah, I agree that how are you is really broad.
Yeah, there's a couple of great suggestions coming in here. One is, how's your day or week and what can I do to make it better if you are ready to listen? Another one would be to keep the organic it sounds like that there's a difference between organic and inorganic interactions. It's to make sure we're providing structure for that. There was a suggestion here in the chat, if for those of you following along, that that we ask everybody to have their camera on for the first 5 minutes and then they can turn it off. That's a really interesting one too, because maybe that forces us to like, go through the routine of getting ready and putting our game face on for the day. Maybe, maybe not. I don't usually wear a button up. So there you go. I think there's one last question we're going to try to tackle here, and we're right up to the line. So I want to do this one very, very quickly, but I think it's an important question. I support and give freely mental health days as needed for my team. Is this a good practice? So Kelsey, I would like you to weigh in on this one.
Absolutely. Mental health is kind of one of those things that's still pretty taboo to talk about, especially in the office. I have a lot of clients worried that their bosses or coworkers just won't understand, or it's a shame thing if they're struggling with mental health or have questions about mental health. I think partnering, knowing your EAP, if you have one, if you don't have one, knowing what local organizations you can partner with to have that, and to have that be part of your culture is huge, because it makes people feel safe and it makes them feel like you care about them as a person. And if on the micro level they're not doing well, then the macro level is not going to be doing well. So how do you manage both? And having mental health days, having time where it's like, yes, take this day off, or hey, we're going to talk about this concept and just put it out on the table. Checking in with surveys or just having the question be out there, and like honoring the day off if you are going to give people a day off, and have them make a plan of what they're going to do, and then plan on following up questions and asking them how was that? Did you end up getting it done? Do you feel refreshed? Like just having those follow-up questions, I think would be really important.
Joan, do you have anything to add? Just a parting thought?
Yeah, I actually have two thoughts. One is, as a leader, there are in many organizations benefits that you can help point to for people and remind them that those supports are available. You could also, like some companies have the culture of a safety moment, and you can use that time as a safe space to open up those conversations. The other thing I would remind is, as a leader, you also have the permission, and I'm going to use in air quotes, the permission to also have mental health days too. So your self-care is just as important as your people.
That's a really good point. I mean, I'm just throwing up our two last slides and it's auto rolling on me, so I got to keep a finger on it. I wanted to throw those up while Joan was finishing her thoughts, just so that we could not have to go through all of our housekeeping at the end. But it's been really good to talk to both of you. In respect of everybody's time, we're going to call it there. There's two things that I'd like you to know about. The first is that go to twe.team/Serenity to sign up for the quick reference guide we're going to be putting together to summarize what we've learned here today. Hopefully we're going to also include in that some things that you can use to plan for yourself, how you're going to use the next few days before the break here. The other thing is keep an eye out for Choose Your New Normal. We're going to be focused on habits for January. We talked about routines. We talked about being more effective in those and how to really, realize your resolution. So I'd like you to keep an eye on that. You're welcome to sign up for that now if you are able. So with that, I'd like to just say a real big thanks to Joan and Kelsey for helping me with this today. It was cobbled together fairly quickly, but we think the need is there. I'll give the final words to you, and to the rest of you, thank you very much for supporting us in this and for supporting yourself, and I wish you all the best. So thanks again, Kelsey.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks, guys, for showing up. And yeah, check out Cultivate if you're needing some more mental health support. We do offer a pay what you can option for anybody. There's no session limits because we just want to remove the financial barriers to seeking out mental health support and having that not be a stumbling block. So absolutely, if you need to continue the conversation, Tim has my contact info. And
absolutely. And I'm sorry, we really meant to let everybody know about that, because it's a big deal to have an organization that's willing to go on a pay what you can. There's no good excuse for not seeking help if you need it. And Kelsey is somebody that is pretty inspiring to be part of something like that. So we will include that information in the QRG as one of the resources. And it's just really great to get a chance to hear from you today. Joan, where can people find you, and what are you most interested in right now?
Well, they can find me through LinkedIn, or they can find me through you, Tim.
Okay.
I just want to give a little plug to something that's near and dear to me, and that's Theatre Calgary. They have a digital production of A Christmas Carol that's coming up. And, the arts is so important during these days, and that especially in support of mental health as well. And excuse me. And they also have a Toonies for Tuesdays, or Toonies for Turkeys movement, which is basically supporting the Calgary Food Bank as well through the holidays. So that's my plug for them.
So that might be a great thing to do with your team, if you can go and go to a virtual Christmas Carol. Bah, humbug. They never called me back when I auditioned. It was like, Jacob Marley. Anyway, so, okay. Anyway, all of you, it's so wonderful to see your smiling faces. Please feel free to reach out to me and say hello. And thanks again. And sign up and we'll get you that QRG. So thanks so much. Have a great afternoon. All the best. Stay healthy.
Thanks for joining.